Welcome to Side by Side, a podcast where I, Robert Kwong, take you inside conversations with artists, creatives, healers, and warriors taking the charge in their transformational story. Today's conversation was held as part of the multidisciplinary writing workshop led by me and former Side by Side guest, Ashley Griggs. We invited special guests into the space where workshop participants got to ask questions about the industry and the craft of writing. Today's conversation spotlights television writer Ashley Sims. Born and raised in Marietta, Georgia, she received her bachelor's in journalism from the University of Georgia before moving to New York and completing her MFA at NYU's Tisch School of the Arts. She got her professional start working as a staff writer for the Peabody Award-winning series Unreal. After Unreal, Ashley spent the next 3 years on the ABC drama A Million Little Things before landing at CW's 4400 as a producer. In this conversation, Ashley shares her insights on claiming your voice and cultivating relationships within the industry, and the benefits of being an evolving artist. You can find more side-by-side conversations at sidebysidepodcast.podbean.com. And if you'd like to learn more about our multidisciplinary writing workshop, please visit www.robertquanhome.com.
This is a cool group with like a bunch of different specialties and stuff. This is really exciting.
I know, it's like we did that on purpose. We're very happy about that. No, a little bit different from our old stomping ground, actually, at DDW. And also, I never have gotten to deep dive with you, so maybe this is an opportunity too. Before we met, all the way in grad school, how did you grow up? What were you interested in as far as like storytelling? Do you remember when you first got interested in writing?
So I was a huge voracious reader. My parents could not keep books in my hand long enough. I was in and out of the library literally every other day. Like it was kind of a problem. So I read a whole ton and I started getting into like Agatha Christie, Arthur Conan Doyle, like mysteries and stuff. There were times where I would be like unsatisfied with the ending, or I would say like, no, it couldn't be that because of this other thing you said. And so I started writing mysteries like as a kid. And then that evolved into, I would see plays and stuff. I'm like, ooh, there's more to writing than just mystery stuff. And, just like as I got exposed to more and more things, I kind of always had the lens of like, how could I make this story better to where I would like it more? Not that it's better, but just like that it would suit my taste more. And I realized later, like, oh, that's just what a writer is. Like you like feel like you have a story to tell and like want to tell people and have that appetite to like express yourself in that way. And I was always very shy. So it really lent itself to me, with a pen and a pad or a computer by myself. And then like, here, look at this thing and this, don't look at my face. So it all kind of linked up.
So what made you first interested in journalism? And then how did you start to explore how did you start to like pivot or consider different forms of writing and storytelling?
So I went to the University of Georgia because they had the Hope Scholarship, which was basically if you got a B average in high school, you could go to a state school for free. And I didn't grow up with a ton of money. So it was like, that was either college was that, or I wasn't going to college. So I went there and they had a theater program. They didn't have like a theater writing or television writing or screenwriting program. So the closest I could get was a minor in film studies. And then the journalism school had telecommunication writing courses where I went in and I bullied the teachers into letting me write spec scripts one-on-one. So I was like, can I do an independent? So I had like 3 independent studies in a semester where I just wrote different shows that were on the air. And I kind of wormed my way in there. So technically journalism. So I got the journalism classes, but I was a bully because I knew what I wanted. So that's kind of about that. And then to pivot, like it kind of wasn't a pivot because that's what I was trying to do the whole time.
Right.
Yeah. So as soon as I knew that TV writing was a career, I was like, that's me, because I watch a lot of TV and I like it. And I like the fact that it keeps going. It doesn't have an end. You could write 10 seasons of a show. You could grow with these characters. Like that's really where my heart was.
Girl, that's the dream. I mean, anyway, cynicism aside, so like you were already interested or you were kind of around in different writing environments and different ways of
Mhm.
approaching story and structure and things like that. So looking back at your grad school experience, specifically to study script writing, theater writing, television writing the way we did, what part of that training experience did you take with you that you thought were like very valuable or beneficial? Was there anything that you wish we could have discussed more or had made more space for? That would have been beneficial to writers.
The things that I got the most out of grad school were the cohort I was with. Like I still have, I still send scripts to those friends. I still communicate with those. They're also like just personally my friends, but like professionally, like, we've worked together, we compare notes on things. But the thing I really got out of NYU was that. And then also, I was so singularly focused on television writing for so long that for someone to force me to write a play or a screenplay where there was an end and it had to be satisfying, I was like, ooh, no, like I need more time. Like the efficiency of writing a complete thing and wrapping it up and not having a sequel to like continue your story was something important to me personally. As something I got out of it. I think we got exposure to a lot of things. We had to see plays outside of school, like that kind of stuff. But I would have liked more of that, I guess. I feel like there were certain, we would just kind of like write a screenplay and then the next like level of that was just write another screenplay. I think it would have been interesting if they gave us something that we had to edit and adapt, because I think adaptation is a really important part of trying to have a career, especially right this second in like a Hollywood context. Or if they gave us a book and said, adapt this, or a newspaper article and said, how would you make this into something else? I think would have been commercially helpful. Maybe not for your own artistic abilities, but for like the marketplace, as it were. I think that would have been helpful.
Yeah, since we're talking about industry related things, which are always so interesting and nuanced, and maybe we'll dive back into the personal a little bit later. And, we want to respect your NDAs and everything, but you've worked on a couple television shows, including Unreal, which I did watch. What can you share about that experience? Was there anything that was unexpected or surprises?
I started season one as a PA, and I worked my way up. So I was staff writer by the end of it. Something I learned in terms of that context was learn how to make a good cup of coffee, not a great cup of coffee. Be really good at your job, but also make it very clear that I'm not here to get coffee. I'm not here to get lunch orders. I am here to write and I am good at it. And have samples ready, have things ready to go to where when someone is kind and says, I'd love to see what you're working on, that you don't say, oh, in 3 weeks, I'll have it. I'm still editing it. Oh, I have half a thing. I'll get it to you later. You need to have stuff on you that's good, that you're proud of, that you can send to someone immediately. Doesn't matter if it's a short story, anything, just something that shows you on a plate, basically, to people. That was something I learned. Something unexpected was there is a lot of relationships matter way more than the quality of your work in a lot of contexts. You have to have both, but you can have a lot of good relationships and be not a very good writer and still succeed. But you can't be a great writer and have not good relationships and succeed.
I think all of
That's
us
what
have
I've
such
found.
interesting reactions to what you just said. There's something both hopeful and maybe some jadedness to it too. But yeah, that's very, very true.
Well, but here's the thing though. It sounds super cynical, and I mean, on its face, it is. But if you go in and just are a good kind of person who wants to be there and is excited to be there and will do whatever job you're tasked with to the best of your ability, then people will like you. They will respect you. They will like it shouldn't be seen as a bad thing. It should be seen as like a challenge, basically. Some people go in with a bad attitude, or they kind of roll their eyes at tasks they're given or things like that. They don't volunteer to do extra things like help out, and they're kind of flummoxed as to why they don't progress up the ladder. And it's like, well, because you're kind of mean and ornery, and who would want to be around that? So take it as a good thing. That's the overarching.
So in addition to that, what are some other, how have you stayed creatively fulfilled and motivated in the gaps, in the uncertainty of different times in the last year in particularly. I think there's a level of like obsession and being intentional and focused on what you want. And then like the first things people ask you about is like, what do you do at the first spot of doubt and questioning the material, or, how long
Mhm.
you can wait and things like that. How have you gotten yourself over these humps and creative struggles?
So that was really difficult in the beginning for me because I am I don't know if you can tell, I'm a very focused and driven person. And when that doesn't yield results, even if it takes a long time, like if it doesn't yield results, then you kind of go, well, why am I pushing so hard? Why am I trying so damn hard? But what I've really tried to do in the past couple of years, and it's really been helpful, is kind of reframe that narrative in my mind and go, you're not for everybody all the time. You're not a Big Mac. You are a filet. Some people are not going to like it, but the people that do are going to love it. So don't count yourself. Don't cheapen your thing. Don't try to write what you think people want you to write or what the marketplace will bear. If you get 100 no's, that's fine. The person that does give you the yes will love it, and it will be your vision start to finish. So I've tried to, with the no's, with the strike stuff, with all of it, go, it doesn't matter how many people say no. The quality of the yes basically matters.
Staying focused, but then also just knowing that you're not for everyone. And then this is like a slightly offshoot of that question, but how do you stay playful and still have writing be fun? I think there's something very satisfying in accomplishing and
Mm.
completing work and projects and things like that. But then I think a lot of us have that tender side that inspired us to want to be writers when we were kids. How have you cultivated that side of you?
I have kind of tried to switch it up. I will say that starting this novel during the strike last year really reinvigorated my creativity. And even like I would write little 10-minute plays, just like stuff that's different, stuff that, and even like little ideas that could be a comedy sketch kind of thing where it's just like a sentence of an idea. Just like take an afternoon and just see where it goes. Like let your mind unspool a little bit. I feel like we don't give ourselves that time a lot. And, we're all working, we're all busy. But I think it's important to every once in a while, like do something that you know, won't be for anyone but you. And I think that will kind of reinvigorate your creativity. I found that's worked for me.
Have you had any trouble or difficulty? There's like work writing, and then there's like quote unquote writing just for me. I don't know if advice is the best word. I know everyone's different, but like what has worked for you? Keep that balance, I guess, for you personally.
I've tried to let it all be a learning experience. As you get into it and you're like a producer and writing things, you start to write something and you go, oh, no, we won't be able to afford that. And then your ideas change, like before you even get it to someone who can tell you no. You're like, well, that can't be at night because night shoots are expensive. Oh, there can't be a kid in it because kids are expensive. And you find yourself notching off options for yourself before you even write the thing. After a while, you're like, oh, wait, why am I doing that? And so then, like, write the script that no one would produce because it would just be too expensive, but write it like with the most amount of explosions, the most amount of water scenes or night scenes or children. Have a crowd of children who can't be AI children. They have to be real for whatever reason. Just kind of let yourself have fun and remember why you wanted to do this in the first place. Like make something goofy, make something like really true, a weird family dinner you had, like anything really, but like just give yourself the space to do that, even if you think it's like not an end goal, because it will help you all the way around.
Yeah, I kind of heard like if you're gonna write for yourself, don't hold back.
Yeah.
That's why you're paid to be professional to refine yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. On Unreal, Marty Knox in the show, one of the showrunners, she said a thing that I really take to heart, which is the end of a season, your job as a writer is to burn down the house. And then the start of the next season is figure out how to build the house. So go into all your writing like that, like literally, like burn all your story, burn down that, like throw all your good ideas out at once, like just make it as juicy and interesting as possible. And then should it continue further, like that's your job, figure it out, like make that second half as juicy as you can too. And it often is really fun and can lead to some really cool paths that you never would have imagined when you were writing the first part.
Thank you, Ashley. I feel like maybe we could open up the space a little bit. We'll still have follow-up questions if we think of them, but would anyone like to ask Ashley something themselves?
I was curious, just like on the sequel part, like you said, blow up the house at the end, so you have to rewrite it. Like you said, part of what you enjoy about television writing is that you don't have to have an end. So how do you keep like a thread or how do you keep that interesting for you? Are you already thinking of the next season as you're wrapping up the first?
For me, the way my process is I'm a very character driven person. I'm not like a plot engine person. I'm a how can these people break up and get together and lose someone and come back and find this new person and like so for me the relationship stuff is the stuff that carries through, like that's the string that navigates through the narrative. And that way if you keep that as your tether, you can have fun plot poppy stuff like crazy, because if you keep that core, it's like the Grey's Anatomy model, basically. Like you keep those relationships interesting, and then you could just have whatever shit happen. But so that's kind of how I think of it. Is like plot stuff, do whatever. Have a shark come in to the hospital, like who's to say, and it bites someone arm up. Like I don't know. I don't know. Did that answer your question at all?
What's helped you personally translate? So you're writing a novel. I'm gonna make sure we have some space to talk about that. Did you find any interesting experiences or like interesting strategies to help you transition from the script structure to prose and vice versa?
I started reading a whole bunch again. Like I would read a book in 2 days again and then pick up another and another and another. And I think what helped me was so in TV and film, when you're producing an episode, usually you have, 2 or 3 lines of action that's, Ashley walks into a room and there's a brick wall behind her and some artwork. Well, then you're in a meeting with the art department and they're going, well, is it abstract art? Is it modern art? Could it be a sculpture? And then you have someone else going, well, like, what is she wearing in this? Is she wearing a prom dress? Is she wearing pajamas? Like, what are we talking about? And you have all these people bringing in all these really interesting ideas. So there comes a time where you have a vision in mind, but other people kind of take it from you. So in a novel, you literally have to be someone's mind's eye. Like there's no one else helping you. You have to guide the reader through the story in a way that you have a lot of help when you're doing TV or film, because other people are involved, other people have good ideas. So that's something that I've actually found that now, having done that, now I've written a pilot since I started the book, and it's way better than what I had written before, basically, because I've known how to do that a little bit better and like guide the other folks.
So also thinking about what you were saying, throwing so many ideas out there just to get it out and see what works, like letting your imagination run wild. I imagine that another thing with inside of that is that you could have an idea with, for a film that has a million explosions, crowd of kids, and then realize maybe this will actually work in another medium where I don't have to worry about budget constraints and all that. So I'm wondering if there's anything that you found in going back and forth between different mediums where like the possibilities have opened up about what ideas you can explore, what you can show, and if you can share a little bit about that.
Sure. I think usually I get really constrained in my like TV world, and I feel like book writing, especially playwriting, because plays are so representational rather than presentational. You can have, the sound of an explosion and suddenly you're in a war zone on a play, but there's just one chair on the stage. And something for me about that lets you kind of spin your wheels of like, oh, I can do whatever the hell I want here. And it actually will probably make it better than seeing the actual thing, because you're getting the real emotion behind it rather than just the stuff going on. It's kind of like plot versus character again. You kind of are able to get that. So I do think that it is fun to, especially if you're kind of beating your head against a wall on one thing, to go, well, what if this was animated? Or what if this was a play? Or what, like, let yourself go there for a bit would be my advice, because sometimes that's where it really unlocks. And that's where you go, oh crap, this is what it was all along. I just didn't see it.
I want to ask about Unreal because I was a huge fan. So thank you. How was that process of satirizing a real thing, like a real TV show, because that is kind of adaptation in a way. So if you could speak about that process, I'd be really interested to hear.
Sure. So the woman that co-created it, Sarah, she was actually a producer on The Bachelor. And so she was in the AFI Women in Film workshop, and she did a short film called Sequin Rays that basically was a super truncated version of what eventually became Unreal. And it was all true, essentially. Like, it wasn't true legally, but like it was true. And so she would just come in and tell us these wild stories of stuff you just couldn't believe. And so through that process, we're going, okay, well, what would we would have a story that wasn't true that we thought of, but that was also really dark and in that same vein. And we would say, would they do something like this? And she would kind of be like, I could see it. And so then we just kind of let ourselves like spin and spin of like, what's the worst thing someone could do here? So that room was actually some of the most fun I've ever had, because it was like pitching the most cruel ideas you could think of. And in that, it became comedy because it was so dark. And the fights we would have, not fights, the discussions we would have in that room, men versus women, is it really that bad? Are these things really things that would happen? I don't think this would happen. It really isn't a female's experience of working in the world. And it's like, no, it is. It's close. So that was really fun too. The cool thing about that room as well was it was top to bottom women in power. It was female executives, female showrunners, female creator. Like, it was great. And we were listened to, which was huge. And that's the only way we could do that show with a character like Quinn King and have her on air and like let that fly. It was really fun.
Because I feel like writers either, like, I've met writers who they're writers because they hate people. They don't like work well with others, you know?
They're not in TV.
Yeah, right, exactly. But TV and theater, I guess I would say, are so collaborative in nature and in its essence. And I think writers can find meet different needs too, maybe creatively. Any suggestions for learning to work in a collaborative environment, especially, let's say you just happen to be someone who's doesn't have as much experience in that yet?
Be a good listener. I mean, like, and to be a writer, you have to be a listener anyway, but be a good listener. And also, I feel like sometimes you'll meet someone, like, for instance, if this was like a writer's room, and if someone pitches an idea that in your brain you're going, oh, that's bad, like that would never work, I don't think that's the wrong road to go down. Instead of stopping there and kind of refusing to let that permeate, go, wait, why do I think that? And say, like, but what if? Let yourself like hear a bad pitch is a way to be a really good collaborator, because sometimes, yes, it might not be that exact thing, but something in there, like the kernel behind why it was pitched, is really great. Or it's just a different way, like someone thinks a different way than you. And it's actually like the exact direction you guys should be going. And like, be willing to be wrong, be willing to pitch ideas that are the first thing on top of your head, be willing to, hear other people. I feel like that's kind of the key. There are people you'll meet in a room sometimes who are very like, no, I don't like it. But then they won't offer, I don't like it, but what if it was this? Like, don't be I don't like it, end of statement. No one will like you. That's like a very bad way to collaborate.
Sounds like a true sketch comedy trained writer too. You're like, yes and please. Yeah.
Oh
exactly.
Yeah. Or no but. Even if you disagree, have an alt or two or some, you know what I mean? It's
like contribute something in addition to just like passing judgment kind of thing.
Yeah. I had a boss that said, before you disagree with something, have another idea that's better, or else don't talk. Like, just let it ride. Because like it's not at all worth it, and you will make enemies very quickly, especially if you're lower on the totem pole. Like, no one likes a new writer, or like someone who they think is young, especially if they're in their 50s or 60s and they're executive producers, and you're going, no, I don't think that would be good. And it's like, excuse me, I've worked on 12 different TV shows. Like, you're not going to win friends.
I feel like the more you talk about it, the more I'm seeing like The Office, or like that weird like workplace culture where like everybody has to be posy it just feels weird that like you have to put a bunch of creatives into that kind of culture of like coffee and hierarchy. We all pretend we love our jobs and it seems weird, but I mean, I guess that's like how we're like societally structured to like work and make money and stuff like that.
It is like, I mean, it's any ensemble workplace show, right? Like it really is like there's someone who's going to not talk very much, but then they'll pitch two things a day and they will absolutely hit and it's perfect and it's wonderful and they've done their job for the day. You have some people who will pitch things every 5 seconds and they're mostly trash, but sometimes they're not. And that's why they're in the room. Like it really is like it takes all kinds, even if it can be irritating, even if it's people are not like you or you clash personally, like that actually is the sign of a good room because you don't want everyone to agree on everything because that's just not the way the world works. And if you just have everyone who has the same opinion in a room kind of spouting off the same thing, like that's going to make for a really boring, emotionally untrue show at the end of the day.
Just want to say the power of writers' rooms. We should have them in the first place.
Yeah. That's one of the big things about, during the strike was they're, keep trying to cut the amount of people. And I'm like, ooh, but you're actually doing yourself a disservice. You're not going to get as much quality.
I'm wondering if there's anything you can share about finding your voice and like sticking true to your voice when you're in a room filled with other voices. You're on a show that's being led by someone with probably a very strong creative voice. What's that been like for you?
It's definitely a balancing act because your job as a writer on a show is to shepherd the showrunner's vision. It's not your place to want to make a thing into a drama that's a comedy. It's not like you are there to help row the boat. You're not there to keep putting water in the boat. But there are ways that you, from your unique life experience, from like if you're a jokey person, like put that in your script, even if it's a drama, like people will like it. Don't try to turn it into a comedy, but like put that little bit of voice in, little turns of phrase for people, little experiences, a weird phone call you had with your parents, pitch that. Like, so much stuff in a writer's room comes from actual true experiences of people. And that's a way to really get your voice in there. And then it kind of gets subsumed into the characters. And then that character kind of lives a little bit more in you as you go. So it's definitely a balance, but it's definitely something that like can be done.
I guess I have like a general question about like writers and like the kinds of support that they have because I feel like but I'm not sure how it applies specifically to like you and the kind of work that you do, but I guess like it kind of goes with like that myth of like the individual genius or whatever. I feel like we always like talk about the artist and like their path and their biography as like this individual thing, but actually like I feel like all writers, they have like people who are supporting them like financially, physically, mentally, emotionally. Like I feel like you need readers and editors and mentors and all of these people behind you. So I guess I'm wondering like for you, like what have been like your sources of support, or like have you been like conscious about like building certain kinds of support for yourself?
I have a huge problem with people with the lone genius narrative. It is utterly false. Even if you think it's true, you can back into generational wealth. You can back into like there's so many things that I'm like, just no, the 30 under 30 lists, don't get me started. I'm like, I truly can't with that. Like we could go on a whole tangent. But for me, I feel like I'm very lucky to have a really supportive partner who has been with me since grad school, since a little bit before grad school. We will have been together for 14 years at this point. So that's been really, really helpful. And he is a person who understands what the job entails, understands that there are long periods of unemployment, or when you are employed, maybe you're not able to be super present. Like there understands the ups and downs of that. I've also been super fortunate to have, like I said, my cohort from NYU. I still like those are some of my dearest friends, and because we all went through the program together, we all kind of understand the pitfalls, the loneliness, the ups and downs that can kind of come with wanting a career in this field. I mean, there are certainly times where I didn't do dishes for a month. You know what I mean? And like there's someone in the background like really helping me, like doing the laundry, doing the dish, doing that stuff. And then like I'm not on a show right the second, so like I'm doing that. Like we trade off. Like there's ways. But yeah, it's just there is no lone genius. That doesn't exist. And people who want to say that there is are lying to you or themselves. But yeah, find you a good group. Find you a good group of people, and then friends who aren't writers, because sometimes you can lose perspective a bit. You know what I mean? But it's true. You know what I mean? It's true. And sometimes like you gotta like kind of go, I'm not working in a coal mine and I'm not curing cancer. Like, yes, this is very important to me, but also it's not the most important thing. Like health, love of family, like that kind of stuff really is important. And to have someone lasso you into that every once in a while when you need it is really important.
So I guess my follow-up question is like, what is your writers group, or like how do you support each other in your writers group?
I have probably maybe 10 people who over time will just like trade work. Every so often I'll get a text that's like, hey, I have this new thing I'm working on. Will you take a look at it? And then, you know, you say, yes, like I have time, or I can get to it next week. Is that okay? Like kind of thing. And usually it's just periodic reach outs, stuff like that. But also being a person who's quick to read other people's work, who's quick to volunteer. If someone wants to get coffee and like hash out an idea, like be a sounding board for people, be a collaborator, because I feel like everyone needs that. And to be someone that is depended on by others is not only like good professionally, it's good personally for you both. You always learn, you always, you know, grow. There's no downside. So even if it takes some time or effort, like it's really important to be a collaborator in all things all the time.
You talked about pitching a little bit, and not, you know, not in the writers and just pitching stories, ideas, you know, which are always fun, but also there's a pitching process. You have pitched a pilot, I believe, right? So, and similarly, you've worked on prose, so you probably have to think about proposals and things like that. What are some good things to prepare or to keep in mind when you're coming up with projects or ideating? What are things that you think are useful to have in your back pocket that's like in addition to the story or the writing itself?
I would say know yourself enough to know the things you're good at. Like I could list off a couple things that I really feel like I'm good at, and a couple things that I feel like I lack and that I try to work on, but are not like my strong suits. And in terms of pitching or ideas, like go with things that have a bit of both. You know what I mean? Like if I'm a writer who's more interested in like characters than big plot moves, but like you need plot in a story. So like try to play to your strengths, but don't just play to your strengths. Add in some things that scare you, that's the only way you'll grow, and growing is the only way you'll like succeed, because you have to keep like your work keeps, you know, evolving as you go on, and it won't evolve if you kind of stay in your comfort zone. And then also get really good at finding actors for whatever age range you want, because every time you pitch something, you have to come up with who is going to be in this. And I have a bunch of pictures of the same actors just saved on file. So find actors you like in whatever age range you like, and then just save them in a folder, because baby, you will need them constantly.
You're like, have visuals, just have a lot of visuals for what you're talking about and what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. You almost can't pitch a project anymore without a deck, which includes a bunch of visuals. And so you have to give them more and more things. It used to be you could tell them an idea and they would understand, but now they need 3 seasons and an entire pilot broken, and it cast, you know, Pinterest images of the place it's going to be. It truly is the most amount of free work you'll ever do. But yeah, that is the thing you will have to learn. So keep a file starting now. It will only help you.
Last week we had another guest speaker who talked about how like the TV industry is now being taken over by tech bros. And like I was wondering like your experience of that transition, and also like what do tech bros like or not like, or like I don't know, I'm just curious about that.
So it's mostly, it's not, you're not really going to come across the tech bros in your day-to-day dealings. What you're going to come across with them is Max, Paramount Plus, all of these companies. Their business used to be content. It used to be television or movies, and then it became content. They only want safe bets. That's why IP is such a big thing now. People are loath to try to, take a chance on an original idea in a way they used to. And they used to be rewarded for it because there were huge hits based on somebody with a brain thought of a thing. And now it has to be based on an article or a book or a story someone said once, but so we can say based on. That's kind of the way the tech bros are moving the industry. Also, the vertical integration of it all. There are less jobs than there used to be because everyone is now smooshing into one thing. Disney Plus is going to smoosh in with Peacock, is going to smoosh in with whatever you're eventually going to have, just cable. That's where we're moving to, which was a fun, scenic 30-year detour. And now we're back to the thing that worked all along. I was a strike captain during the strike, so I got real deep in the weeds on all of this stuff. The tech bros and the money and stuff is not great, but it's like Robert's saying, the full circle of it. It'll go back like it always does. You know what I mean? Like, it is cyclical. They'll get sick of it. They'll sell it to someone who actually cares, and then people will start making decisions based on what people want and not a stock price. That's the hope.
Well, maybe we'll go back to full circle where one day is like, what happened to Mad Men? And we're like, you canceled all of them, but we can try again.
I guarantee you someone out there is trying to revamp Mad Men as we're talking. It just is happening, and I guarantee it.
I'm wondering if there's anything you would love to share about your experience as a strike captain, because I know you did some pretty like heroic things, in my opinion, during the strike. You were really pounding the pavement for months and months. So I'd love if you have any, like, I don't know, anything you gleaned from like being with that community, on the picket line, or anything that you learned about the writing community in general during that time.
I learned that the writing community is very hard-headed, which is great because so am I. I often felt alone in my like drive towards a goal and like not looking at anything while I'm trying for it. There's a lot of people like me in our guild, and I love that. I also learned the importance of community again, but with the other trade crafts, with IATSE, with the Teamsters, with not so much the DGA, with SAG-AFTRA, all of these things. It's so important that now, you have to fight for fair wages, but the best way you can do it is to get as many people as possible linking arms with you. And in that regard, during the strike, I was a strike captain, but I wasn't a lot. I was a strike captain in charge of a lot of the location pickets. So I would at 3 a.m. be at some weird location in the valley where Ben Affleck's trying to shoot a movie that he probably shouldn't be shooting at the moment. And we would find all the exits to it and have our 2 people at each thing. And we would be wearing our blue shirts with hoodies over it. And at a certain time, we would yank off the hoodies and have a sign. Is the most spy-like I'd ever gotten to. I've always wanted to be in a spy thriller, and I kind of was. I also was a part of a team who went to New Mexico and did that for 2 weeks. There were some Netflix and Amazon shows shooting there. And one of our members, George R.R. Martin, put us up in some of his houses, which was very cool. He had a whole warehouse where we had signs. He brought snacks for us. He is a older gentleman who's not in the best health. But yeah, he was on the picket line in 90-plus-degree weather with us, which was crazy because a lot of members who are wealthier or whatever kind of would send a food truck, which was nice, but then never really actually go picket with us. Again, we appreciate the free coffee, but also like your presence is needed. But he was out there, God bless him. And then my favorite story from that was there was an Amazon show that was shooting at a huge ranch, and we only had enough people to have 2 people at every gate, plus 1 guy in a car. So anytime someone had to use the restroom, the guy in the car had to drive 20 minutes to a different gate, pick them up, switch with them. They would go to like a gas station or something and go. It was a 15-hour picket. We were there for 15 hours, but eventually they called the day, and we cost Amazon over $1 million in that one day. And that was one of my most proud moments. I had a kind of unique experience during the strike, which was very fun. But through that, the only reason we were able to do that was because brave IATSE and Teamster members respected our picket line. Had they just went in, they would have just shot the day. But they would wait outside to the detriment of their own pocketbooks. It was a huge sacrifice on their part that we are trying to repay now as they go into their negotiation.
Power to the people. Thank you, Ashley, for giving us a glimpse of like, yeah, did you know when you were a writer growing up that you would be signing up for bathroom duties at a ranch? No.
I am from Georgia, so union is a dirty word where I come from. I was actually nervous to tell my parents that I was in the union for a while because it just is they are the bad guys. Now they understand differently. But yeah, it's been a hugely eye-opening experience, but it has been a thing where you do realize we are collaborators in all things. And so if you just keep that in mind and try to help people where you can and try to just be a good person, that's the way we all survive and thrive in this business.
Thank you so much, Ashley. We really enjoyed having you here. It's so inspiring to stay connected to fellow writers and artists. Ashley G, is there anything you would like to add?
Nothing really additional to add. I mean, I'm so grateful, Ashley, for you to come and spend some time with us and chat. I'm so inspired by you all the time, but you know that.